Okay. You notice I was very silent about the election and during that whole thing. I didn't want to influence anybody, and it kind of looked like the South Node was going to, eat Hillary's lunch a bit anyway. And, I'm a radical environmentalist. The main thing I care about is global warming. And I spent my life fighting the carcinogens and the pesticides and, for government and corporations. So Donald Trump's initial speeches and things, to me, are chilling. They were chilling. And here's a demon about to invade us all. Doesn't recognize global warming. What's wrong with this man? And we elected him president. But I'm ready to do some work on him now, and here it is. Okay. I first took a real good look at his chart, and there's some kind of neat things here. Well, let's go at it slow. First of all, you always look for the rising sign. He's Leo rising. Well, you could have guessed that. Leo the lion. He's always up on stage. And then we have Mars here, right on the rising sign. Mars rising in Leo. Leo's a fixed fire sign. That's why he has so much energy and he just doesn't stop, huh? And with Mars there, oh boy, a lot more energy, very competitive. He was very good at sports in school. Good Martian, yeah? Mars is a real important thing to him. Now, because he's Leo rising, right? The sun rules Leo, and the sun is his ruling planet. And so when you look at the sun, you find it's in Gemini. And Gemini people are always, they go low, they go high, they go low. You want somebody to negotiate, you get a Gemini. Why? It used to be well known that Geminis, if you told somebody you were a Gemini, sometimes they're light-fingered and two-tongued, and it was hard to get a job if somebody knew you're a Gemini 100 years ago. But Mr. Trump has the sun conjunct the North Node. He has a very caring, nurturing side to himself. And what's this? Here's Uranus at almost 18 degrees. And Uranus conjuncts Mr. Trump's sun. What is that? Well, Uranus is an environmentalist. That's astrology. That's common sense. Yeah. So how come he's so against science? There's something fishy going on here, because it looks to me like Mr. Trump is a scientist. Well, he's a common sense scientist. He's independent as hell. He wants to go do things himself and not be told what to do. That's a character of Uranus. Now, in this case, Uranus is the ruler of Aquarius, and that's his partners. Aquarius rules his 6th and his 7th house. The people who work for him and the people who are his partners are Uranus people. They're also independent, different, unique, original types, common sense. So why isn't he over on the side of environmentalists? Well, I was clear that he got advice to put a little coalition of people together in order to beat Hillary's coalition of women, by and large. And the people who don't want to be regulated are Aquarian types. We don't want the government coming in here and telling us what to do, taking our land, running all over us, giving licenses to corporations to take away our rights. That's the way people feel when they're really Aquarian spirits, huh? Now, his Aquarian spirit, nurturing as it is opposed by the moon. And the moon is here with the South Node, which is, I need help. So the ladies in his life, the mothers, they need help. And the moon is the ruler of the 11th house. 11th house starts with Cancer. That's groups, organizations, companies, and they need help. And so he's the helper that goes and helps these groups. Yeah? How does he do it? Well, he's got some help. If you look at the sun, North Node, Uranus, it has trines down here to Jupiter. Jupiter, the truth teller, the lawyers, Jupiter, at 17 degrees, trines Uranus. How is this man not an environmentalist? I do not understand. I would think he would fall right into it. But he probably wasn't going to get elected that way. And he wouldn't have the oil companies and the ranchers and everybody else behind him. So, anyway, upshot is, here's another bunch of sextiles here. And it's to Mars. Who's Mars? Well, sports, the military. Mars is the ruler of the ninth house here. Here's experts. So he's got this trine and sextile system here that helps him oppose the moon south node. So the more I look at this, the more I say, gee, maybe this guy has so much common sense that he will be convinced. I start to watch the way he deals, and he goes in there, in his negotiations with a great big lie or an exaggeration or a threat of some kind. He tells Russia, gee, we're going to build up our nuclear capability. Putin comes back and says, hey, we're not going to bankrupt ourselves having an arms race here. We admit the U.S. is the most powerful military thing in the world, more powerful than all the rest of us put together. No argument about that. And so he got immediate results, nice phone calls and letters from Russia with his threat, see? And so he's a negotiator, and he goes in, like a used car salesman and said, this is a $100,000 car. And a little bit later, it's $80,000. Then it's $60,000. What a deal I got for you. It's only $30,000. Whatever it is, he doesn't stick to what he starts out with. That's number one. And so don't expect he's going to build a wall or he's going to give away all the oil under your feet to corporations, or he's not going to recognize the global warming problem. Those things can all change, just snap. This guy changes fast. He's got Uranus conjunct the sun. He's a rebel. And he's like a good scientist. You give him the right information, he'll change his mind. So there's still hope for us all out there, folks. Yeah. Here's the interesting thing. Here's the bad guy, Saturn. The restriction of the government. Venus rules his 10th house. His career, he's known to deal with Venus stuff. Pretty girls, gambling, pleasures. His midheaven is in Taurus, which is the luxury stuff. So he says, I always have the luxuries. I have the best hotels and the best casinos and the best. So there's Venus. The thing is, Saturn is here too. And Saturn's at 23 degrees. Now his sun is at 23 degrees. So there's a little 30-degree angle between Saturn and the sun. In order for him to do what he wants, he only gets his way half the time. Saturn's there saying, hey, wait a minute, we're going to regulate this. There's laws, there's rules. Saturn, in fact, rules the 5th house, and that's his kids. So I'm going to put the kids in charge, and then he realizes he lost the power there. There's a seesaw here, the little 30-degree angle, huh? And that 30-degree angle seesaw, one has power, the other one doesn't. So if he gives his kids power, he loses power. He goes down on the seesaw when they go up. Same with regulations. I heard somebody say, it isn't that we don't want clean air and clean water, we don't want the government telling us how to do it. Well, that's Saturn on a seesaw from the sun. So he doesn't like Saturn stuff, the old laws and the rules and the regulations. And I can see why he wouldn't. I'm amazed that he involves his kids in any of this. I guess the seesaw turns, regularly in different directions, and he has to put up with it. Okay, I'll give the kids a little power when the seesaw's this way, then I'll take it away when it's that way, and, maybe he can do that with the laws. I don't think he can overturn the ban on drilling up the Arctic and the Atlantic, though. There are things that he can't move that are in law that he has to work around. Well, very interesting chart, huh? Here's another thing. The squares are, what you see. Here's Neptune squaring Mercury. Who was that? Ronald Reagan. That's the old foot in the mouth thing. That's where you say right and meant left. This is where you say things that you just dreamed up. And we know that he's like that, isn't he? Yep. So, between the Neptune-Mercury square and the fact that he's a Gemini sun sign, which is a salesman and can change and skip back and forth like an 8-year-old, he's not, he's steady in the body, and his real identity is very steady and doesn't give up. He's Leo, the lion. But, as far as a king goes, and that's what he is, maybe he's the last of the kings here, huh? He's fast on his feet. Here, I made a list of some of the different angles on his chart. He's got a lot of good stuff going on here. The poor stuff, that happens too. He doesn't really like the spotlight, believe it or not. He'd rather not be out there in the public arena like he is. Of course, there he tweets, doesn't he? There's Uranus. He was on television. He had the show, and we have Uranus power here. There's hope for this man after all. There is. Very interesting thing, when I started looking at his progressions, first thing came up, the moon hit Venus January 20th. That's when he was inaugurated. And Venus happens to rule his 10th house. So on January 20th, Mr. Trump was really worried about his career choices. That was his day of worry. And he is right to be worried. He can't be a CEO king and rule this government. No. It's a Gemini government. Well, it is a Gemini country. Well, anyway, I had a lot more to say about this. But I tell you one thing. There's a full solar eclipse on this rising sign in August. And he's never going to be the same if he survives. So you better start taking a look at Pence and some of that stuff. I decided to check up on it a little bit. Well, the solar eclipse, the path runs pretty much right through the U.S. And there it is, the total eclipse, 75% eclipsed. And this is the main place. So this eclipse is American-made, okay? Mr. Trump is certainly part of it all. I decided to check up on it again, and one of the things I've learned is the power of solar returns if they're precessed. And whoa, have I proved it in my own life and with some of my family. So here's the solar return of the U.S. government now. This is not the country. You are not your football team, okay? You are not your corporation. This is a big corporation. Here's the chart of it. Here's the solar return of it. Moved to Washington. It's not Hawaii, excuse that. We're in Washington, D.C. And what does it look like? Now this is July. The eclipse happens in August. And one of the main features of this solar return is here's the moon and Pluto here in the 12th house. And it is opposing the sun and Mars. The sun is usually the father, huh? And with Mars conjunct kind of describes King Trump, doesn't it? So what's this? Here's the moon Pluto. Here's somebody, possibly a lady or just a public member. This is an employee. Moon rules the 6th house. And there's going to be a trauma. And it's an opposition. And so look out. This is a this is a time we're going to remember a lot in August of 2017. And the solar return says we're stuck with going over it and over it and over it for a full year until July 2018. Well, a little more on King Trump. One of his foibles is the things he says. And in his natal chart, we got Mercury squaring Neptune. This is confused speech. Mercury, squaring Neptune. So, we can tell now when this is set off because it runs from 6 to 9 degrees of cardinal signs. Now it happens, there's some new moons. at 8 degrees. And when a new moon happens in cardinal signs, the next month following, he's got his foot right in his mouth. He's saying things that, are confused, very confused words, and it's a real problem. So, we've got one here, March. Well, look, I guess the one you'll remember the most started on the new moon at the end of December. And it was a new moon at 8 Capricorn. And that set it off pretty strong. New moon at the end of January kind of takes him out of it. So this month of January, he had his foot in the mouth all the time. Yep. And hopefully, he'll get it more straight, and he'll start speaking good words on the new moon in Pisces, which trines King Trump's Mercury, and his mind gets straight. By the way, Mars is going to hit his Mercury-Neptune square. February 4th to February 8th, you'll see him angry. And again, it hits it on June 13th to June 16th. 2 small periods where Mr. Trump better ask himself what he's protecting before he talks.